Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. We can also be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour, we'll be exploring Victory Garden 2. In March 1917, Charles Lathrop Pack organized the U.S. National War Garden Commission and launched the Victory Garden campaign. Food production had fallen dramatically during World War I, especially in Europe, where agricultural labor had been redirected to military service and remaining farms devastated by the conflict. The campaign promoted the cultivation of available private and public lands, resulting in over 5 million gardens in the U.S. and foodstuff production exceeding $1.2 billion by the end of the war. Victory Gardens became popular in Canada in 1917. Under the Ministry of Agriculture's campaign, A Vegetable Garden for Every Home, residents of cities, towns, and villages utilize backyard spaces to plant vegetables for personal use. And war effort. In the city of Toronto, ladies' organizations brought expert gardeners into the schools to get school children and their families interested in gardening. In addition to gardening, homeowners were encouraged to keep hens in their yards for the purpose of collecting eggs. The result was a large production of potatoes, beets, cabbage, and other useful vegetables. In Britain, Digging for Victory used lands such as waste ground, railway edges, ornamental gardens and lawns, sports fields, and golf courses for farming or vegetable growing. Victory gardens were planted in backyards and on apartment building rooftops, with the occasional vacant lot commandeered for the war effort and put to use as a cornfield or a squash patch. During World War II, sections of lawns were publicly plowed for plots in Hyde Park, London, to promote the movement. Australia launched a Dig for Victory campaign in 1942 as rationing and shortage of agricultural workers began to affect food supplies. Home gardens continued throughout the war. Amid regular rationing of food in Britain, the United States Department of Agriculture encouraged the planting of Victory Gardens during the course of World War II. Around one-third of the vegetables produced by the United States came from Victory Gardens. By May of 1943, there were 18 million Victory Gardens in the United States, 12 million in cities, and 6 million on farms. Now we find ourselves in need of new Victory Gardens. The enemy is not war on nations, but the war on food itself. From insecticides and pesticides to GMO and irradiation, our food has been attacked and distorted to the point that it's poisoning us with no apparent solution in sight. Genetically modified pollen floats in the air, polluting heirloom crops. Our soil has been so stripped by over-farming, there's little sustenance left. Instead, nutrition is artificially produced by chemical fertilizers, fed by water polluted with pesticides. Even our own seeds have been poisoned, hybridized, genetically modified, and chemicalized. We are reaping an empty harvest, and our people are overbloated with toxins and starving to death. However, there is a solution to this seemingly insurmountable problem. It's the Victory Garden of tomorrow. My guest this hour is a man with vision before his time that may very well carry the answer for our future generations. Dr. UDGAR Parsons, after graduating and practicing as a dentist and orthodontist in the UK, decided to pursue a life of self-sufficiency on a remote farm in the northwest Scotland. For the next 10 years, he and his family lived off-grid on 20 acres with no roads. The only access? By boat. Over the course of the years, he has many careers, including aircraft mechanic, home builder, installer of solar systems, gardener, plus all the roles involved in being an entrepreneur and starting a business. In 1985, he and his wife Puja moved to Aspen, Colorado, where he fell in love with the growing dome. That love affair continues to this day and carries a legacy of his value of stewardship for the planet and her people. I will introduce UDGAR and his amazing growing dome after this short break. You are listening to The Science of Magic. This and other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars. One people, one nation, to heal this earth of ours.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our special guest this hour is Dr. UDGAR Parsons, steward of the magical organism known as the Growing Dome, www.growingspaces.com. UDGAR, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic to share your vast experience of off-grid greenhouse gardening with us.
You're very welcome. I'm very happy to be with you today.
I have to say, your greenhouses are an absolute fascination to me. I was searching online to find a greenhouse that would work where I was planning on building, and I looked through all sorts of different options. And then when the one that you were doing popped up, it was like, this isn't a greenhouse. This is a magical organism. Is that the way you view it?
Oh, absolutely. Every time I go in there after a really cold winter's night and I see all the plants still happily growing and flourishing, it's like, oh my goodness, this is very, very magical. And it feels like a magical world just to be in there, and I'm sure you've experienced that yourself.
I have. It's every time I walk into it, it's like walking into a fairyland, no matter what time of year it is. Where did you first learn about growing domes?
Well, I was living in the Roaring Fork Valley near Aspen, Colorado, and I came across an organization called the WindStar Foundation, founded by John Denver, and this was back in '85. And essentially they had this 50-foot greenhouse, which they called a biodome. It was 50 foot in diameter and about 35 foot high. And I never forget going in there in the middle of November, and outside it had been like maybe single digits, minus 15, below zero. And I stepped inside there, and everything was just flourishing. Peas and Swiss chard and carrots and beets and all these things were growing effortlessly, and it was like going from Alaska to Florida in one step. My glasses immediately fogged up, and it was just the most amazing thing. And I said, well, wow, what kind of heater do you have? And they said, oh, we don't have a heater. It doesn't need a heater. And it's like, oh, my goodness me. And so I actually started to work there. I got offered a job helping to manufacture these. And I just got so inspired and on fire at how amazing these biodomes were that I said to myself, I have to make these available to as many people as possible. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And it's kind of a love affair, really, with the magic of growing fresh plants year-round in the Rocky Mountains using just natural systems to do it.
That's what fascinated me about them, because I'm totally off grid where I'm at and had to have something that would be totally off grid, and that's not easy to find. So you say they were totally off grid when you first found them?
Yep, and I've always, I'm a purist by heart, and so my growing dome greenhouse I've had here at 7,500 feet in the Rocky Mountains. Over 15 years I've had it on my property. I've only heated it for 1 week in 15 years. And I grow fresh greens and fresh produce all winter long, and it doesn't miss a beat. So that's, some people do put a little extra heat in, but it's not necessary.
What kind of heat do you use if you do need to heat it?
Well, most people put in a little propane heater, a mister heater, or something like that, and then other people might use electric heaters. But as I say, it's got two built-in heating systems that are actually part of the growing dome kit. And one is a huge water tank that's like 1,000 gallons of water that sits on the north side of the dome, and all day long the sun shines on the dark painted surface of that tank as it tracks across the sky. So it's absorbing heat all day long, and at night it's releasing the heat back into the dome to help it stay warm on a cold winter's night. So that's the first type of heating system. And the second is what we call an under-soil heating or climate control system, where we have a solar panel that drives a fan that blows the hot air that happens when the sun shines. It blows that hot air through the soil all day long, warming the soil, and that's entirely free energy. It doesn't cost you anything, and the soil can be up to 5 degrees warmer at the end of the day than it was at the beginning. And one of the reasons plants stop growing in the winter is because the soil gets too cold. So it does have its own built-in heaters, which are entirely free and off-grid.
That was one of the things that really fascinated me. Now, was this undersoil heat part of the original domes that you found, or is this something that you've added?
This is something I've added after the fact, and it's been very successful, and people have actually built on that and even done more comprehensive systems that blow hot air through deeper amounts of soil. But generally you have to be on grid to run those because they have a bigger fan and they're designed to run at night as well in the day. So I regard my system as very efficient for people who don't want to use any amount of fossil fuel. So I think in terms of people's consciousness of climate change and trying to minimize our fossil fuel consumption, one of the reasons the increasing success of the dome is that people are getting more and more aware of that, and essentially, the growing dome is a net zero energy greenhouse, which I have not found anywhere else through the internet.
Yeah, that's what so impressed me. And the first time I stepped in one, I saw this little tiny fan kind of set down in the soil. And then there are these black pipes that came up on either side. out of the soil. And I went, what in the daylights is that? And the lady that was showing me the dome at the time, she says, oh, well, that heats the soil underneath. And I had heard one of the major problems, particularly in this area, of growing year-round is the soil temperature from underneath getting too cool to support the roots. And I thought, what an amazing provision. And then I had an iron worker, bless his heart, does beautiful work, design me what we call these, he designed them, but he'd done them before, pipe hiders or concealers. And he built me these beautiful cranes that stand up in the dirt and look like ornaments, but they actually cover the pipes that go down into the dirt that pull the heat underneath. So these buildings are very, very aesthetic with very little work. Has that been your experience as well?
Yes, indeed. And I just want to say one more thing about heating the soil, is that the dome comes with a wall which is insulated, and then we put an insulating skirt all the way around the growing dome that prevents frost coming in under the wall. So basically you've got a heated, insulated soil bed. And so that's, I haven't seen that anywhere else, and that's very, very efficient to help plants keep growing all winter long.
Yes, and I had I had beds built into mine with wood in a really asymmetrical shape so that I could easily get in and out. Good thing with a broken back now. But so that I could reach the beds. And so now I have raised beds within this whole structure, which really helps everything stay warm and accessible. And you can do intensive gardening in them too, I understand.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What I regard the growing dome as is an enclosed indoor garden where you can grow on 3 different levels. So at the ground level, you have all your little low-growing plants like lettuce and all the root crops, beet and carrots and radish. And so those are growing at the ground level. And then at the intermediate level, you've got your vining plants like peas or beans, tomatoes or peppers, squash and things like that. And they occupy the intermediate zone. And then high up, I have a lot of smallish trees in my growing dome. I've got quite a number of fig trees in my different demonstration domes. I have grapevines, I have jujube and pomegranate. And, essentially, you just fill the whole space with plants. And the beautiful thing about having trees and plants with big leaves, in the summer they help to keep the dome cool, because not only do the systems that work synergistically together to keep the dome warm in winter, they also work together to keep the dome cool in the summer. So we have automatic windows where the air comes in the lower window and goes out the top window through natural convection. The water tank heat helps keep it cool in the summer, as well as north wall insulation. But one of the main things is to have plants with large leaves. And so what they do is they do 2 things. One is the leaves themselves act as evaporative coolers, because they're always transpiring moisture, so that helps keep the dome cool. And then also the large leaves of the tomato plants or squash, something like that, they shade the soil and they keep the soil cool. So instead of the sun baking down on the soil and getting up to 90 or 100 degrees, it stays cool at 75 to 80 degrees, which keeps the dome cool. So essentially I can go into a growing dome with a lot of foliage in there on a hot summer's day, and it will be actually cooler inside the dome than it would be outside, which is quite amazing for a greenhouse to be able to accomplish that.
Yes, I've never seen that before, and I'll probably never see it since. We're going to have to take a quick break here, and we'll get back with all this fun discussion on growing things in magical places after this short break. We'll return to our discussion after this break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Would you like to hear more? Other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
searching through the night. One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars. One people, one nation.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our special guest this hour is Dr. UDGAR Parsons, steward of the magical organism known as the Growing Dome. www.growing.spaces.com. Welcome back, UDGAR.
Thank you.
We were just discussing how the dome magically, I like the word magic, magically stays cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Now, I was instructed to put up this very modern-looking heat shield. Can you talk a little bit about the heat shield?
Yeah, basically in warmer climates, especially one with a lot of bright sun, which you have down in New Mexico there, essentially the dome any greenhouse could tend to overheat. So what we did is we researched shade cloths, because most shade cloths are either a dark color like green or black. And basically when the sun shines on those shade cloths, they do filter out some of the brightness and some of the heat, but also the shade cloth itself gets very warm. And so if you put that up inside the greenhouse, basically you're actually adding more heat to the greenhouse because you've got this shade cloth which is warm. So we researched and came up with a aluminum-based shade cloth called Aluminet, which stays cool because it actually reflects a lot of the light and the heat rather than absorbing it. So we're very pleased and proud to have discovered that, and now it's available with our growing domes.
Yeah, I've just been delighted with it. It's amazing. You'd think on the west side, I thought, oh, this is going to get ugly. But I had tomatoes growing there all year, and they didn't suffer whatsoever. In fact, I had, again, my iron worker build this beautiful lattice work up and over the top, and they climbed up there like grapes, and the fruit hung off of those things. I was afraid I'd get knocked out if one of them fell off. They got so large and did so well. It seemed to extend the growing season. They started earlier, ended later, and they were delicious, I have to tell you. So it was amazing. Like I said, I thought they'd get burnt over there on the west, and it didn't seem to bother them at all. You have this other really interesting thing in your greenhouse that is my favorite part, and that's the solar-powered water pump that makes this beautiful fountain sound in your gorgeous pond. Did you implement that as well, or was that part of the original design?
No, that was not part of the original design. what I found was that people were tending to grow fish in the tank and also aquatic plants. And I recommend people put snails in the tank because they together form an aquatic self-sustaining ecosystem. So that's been very, very satisfactory. But fish do like a certain amount of oxygen, and so I was trying to figure out an attractive way to aerate the tank rather than just having a bubbler, which is fine, but it's kind of boring in my opinion. So I came up with this solar-powered waterfall where we have a little solar-powered pump that pumps the water up from the tank, and it trickles down through the waterfall, and it works when the sun is shining, and at night it doesn't work, of course, but it's completely free, doesn't use any energy at all, and it's a very attractive feature. It keeps the tank aerated, and it creates a very nice ambience inside the space.
It also seems to keep water plants very healthy, and I have these little floating water plants in there that are absolutely gorgeous, and they bloom, and they serve to also protect the water from too much sun so it doesn't get that green pea soup look. And it's so amazing to have not only your regular growing vegetables and all this, but all these beautiful blooming water plants there as well. How many gallons is in that tank?
Well, I think you've got a 22-foot growing dome, and I think there's about 1,100 gallons in that tank. But the water tank has been calculated to be the correct size for each size of dome to provide the thermal mass required. So the smaller domes, like 15-foot diameter, maybe have a 600-gallon tank, whereas the largest size is 42-foot diameter, and that has a 3,500-gallon water tank. So it is nice to have it to be an attractive feature as well as a very, very functional part of the dome system.
It's absolutely beautiful, and it adds so much character. I mean, that large of a body of water just has a presence all its own. And I think it adds to the feeling of an organism. So you've got all the organisms growing in the water, as well as those growing in the soil and the air and everything else. How many different sizes of greenhouses do you have, UDGAR?
Well, we have 6 different sizes ranging from 15-foot diameter to 42-foot diameter. But yours is the most popular size, a 22-foot diameter, which is the same as I have at my home. And I love that size. It just resonates with me. You go in there, and the nice thing about the 22-foot size, you can grow a variety of things in there. You can grow not only vegetables, but you can grow herbs. I have a beautiful rosemary in mine, and lots of different herbs. And also, you can grow small trees, say like a small fig tree or a grapevine. So there's a whole mixture of things. I love strawberries and fruit, vegetables, and flowers we can grow most of the year round.
That's amazing. So how many people can be fed year-round by what sizes?
Well, in terms of growing things like potatoes or grain, you wouldn't want to grow those in the dome. But in terms of fresh vegetables, I think the USDA calculated that the average person consumes like 200 pounds of fresh vegetables a year. And so that size that I was just talking about could keep a family of 3 or 4 in fresh vegetables year-round, because things grow really, really fast in there, especially at this time of year. I don't know if you've realized, but the increasing daylight length makes things grow really, really quickly, and they're so tender and delicious. I love just going down and grazing, pulling a fresh carrot and eating it right from the ground, or fresh peas, strawberries. I always go down in my growing dome and just graze. So it's a magical space, that's for sure.
I understand that you worked in aviation. Is that an airplane mechanic? Is that true?
Yeah, I was an aircraft mechanic for 3 or 4 years, and I love that. I've always had a very mechanical bent. I love figuring out how things work. So for me, to have something that grows fresh plants, and I can go there when it's all white and frosty and be in nature. I love being in nature and growing plants, but I also love science. And for me, the Growing Dome combines the in fascination and interest of the scientific principle along with an opportunity to be in a natural space all year round. So it is quite an amazing thing to have a Growing Dome in your life.
Well, you've changed the design quite a bit as far as what the dome itself is made out of, the part that you see through, that the light comes through. Is that true?
Well, my initial growing domes were a greenhouse plastic, a woven plastic on the outside and a heat-retaining plastic on the inside, so it was a double glaze. But after about the first 4 years, I went over to polycarbonate structured sheet, and that's a very, very long-lasting, very strong, insulated panel. And just like a double glazed window has two skins and one dead air space, polycarbonate has 5 skins and 4 dead air spaces built into it. So it's an amazing bit of technology, and we've used that pretty consistently for the last 20 years or so. So I would say we've been very faithful to the polycarbonate. We think it's a great thing.
All right, there's nothing like tried and true. We're going to have to take another break. I'm sorry, but we will be back on the flip side of this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Our theme song, One People, One Nation, is from the Winds of Time album by my musical group Starfire and can be found on iTunes.com, cdbaby.com, Amazon.com, and my website, GwildaWiyaka.com.
One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars. One people, one nation.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our special guest this hour is Dr. UDGAR Parsons, steward of the magical organism known as the Growing Dome, www.growing.spaces.com. UDGAR, during my opening, I had some very dire predictions about the condition of our food sources. Do you have anything to say or share about that?
Well, certainly GMOs have been a major concern of me and certainly a lot of my clients. I think it's a very bad thing that's happening on our planet, as well as the excessive use of Roundup, which is now being found to be a potential carcinogen by the World Health Organization. And so there are so many things going into our environment on every level, into the air, into the water, into the soil. So to have more control over what you eat and what you grow, I think, is very, very important in this day and age.
Yes, it really is. It's pretty scary to me what we've actually done to what nature created perfectly to start out with, and the ramifications, the health ramifications we're starting to see. It'd be one thing if we could choose to be involved, but it looks like it's kind of being imposed on us at this point. Is that what you're seeing?
Oh, absolutely. There's so much information out there about the way governmental agencies and corporations who have no caring for people's health or individual people's rights. They're just riding roughshod over our society, and it has to change. And I think one needs to work in two ways. Firstly, to empower yourself by being more self-sufficient, and like you, I live off the grid currently, and it's tremendous sense of self-satisfaction. When it rains, I collect water. When it's sunny, I collect electricity. And so, that's one way. But also to become aware of what's going on in the world and be proactive about standing up against some of the worst excesses that are going on. So I think it's a twofold thing. One simply can't hide your head in the sand and say, well, I'm okay, so everybody else tough. I think we all have to be involved and engaged.
Yeah, it's some of the things that have come up are so ludicrous. It's like at one point, the state of Colorado decided that every drop of rain that fell out of the sky belonged to Colorado, and we had to have permits to even collect rainwater off of our own houses. And I had to say to myself, I wonder what God has to say about that.
Really?
Yeah, the regulations are getting pretty scary.
But I do want to say something about not only do we sell greenhouses at growing spaces, but we have a tremendous support system for our customers. We have 2 Facebook groups where people share information and experiences and excitement. We have a great YouTube channel that has like over 100 YouTube videos about gardening and growing, about many topics related to the growing dome. We also have online classes that are available, and we're always at the end of the phone for either technical support or answering gardening questions. We have a great blog with hundreds and hundreds of topics about all sorts of things, pest control, soil amendments, and things like that. So it's not just like we sell a greenhouse and say, well, good luck now, you're on your own. We're really connected with our clients over the long term. So I think that's really important to put that out there, because we're very proud of that.
Support is very important. UDGAR, what do you see the future of our world's food supply?
Well, it's a big question mark. Going through, the Senate Agricultural Committee voted to make labeling of GMOs much, much more difficult and even illegal. GMOs are labeled in 64 other countries, and yet in America there's this huge corporate controlled movement to not even allow GMO labeling. That's very scary. The second thing, I read an article on Facebook that now certain organically GMO-free plants show traces of contamination with Roundup. So I really don't know what the future brings. I don't have a huge amount of hope, but then again, I can never give up hope. I always have to hope that we can somehow stand up against the corporate control.
And the greenhouse, being their own organism, kind of filters out a lot of these more negative effects, as long as we can find good sources of seed. Is that correct?
Well, I love to save my own seed. Every year I let a certain number of plants grow to seed and harvest the seed and sow my own seed. And over the years, they actually do a lot better inside the growing dome, because the offspring are more capable of withstanding the conditions and do a lot better. And I always save the seeds from the healthiest plants. So I think seed saving is a huge thing that we need to learn more about. It's very simple and easy and very satisfying, and so that would be one thing I would certainly recommend.
And how about our heirloom seeds? I know they're getting harder to find, but the ones before they were modified and changed to grow faster, better, all that stuff.
Well, I know that more and more towns are actually starting a seed bank. There's a town called Basalt in Colorado, and they've got a seed bank that operates a little bit like a public library. You can go and get seeds, and people can grow them out. And so there is a movement to keep heirloom seeds alive. And I think all of these movements are tremendously important, the grassroots movements to oppose some of the more harmful changes. And so that gives me a lot of hope that people are waking up, they're thinking more, they're being proactive. So I am hopeful in spite of all the challenges that are facing us.
You know, if there's one thing I've learned over the years is nature will have her way. And we can get our grubby little paws in there and distort things all we want, but eventually she's bigger than the rest of us.
Oh, absolutely indeed.
So the more of us we can get on deck supporting the way life is really supposed to work, I think the faster we can turn this around.
I think so too.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, UDGAR. Do you have anything to say to our people in closing?
No, I think just take back your power and do whatever you can to be self-sufficient, and it gives a tremendous sense of pride. So, get off the grid or generate your own electricity. My factory is entirely grid-tied. We generate 90% of our own power. So empower yourselves and enjoy and spend time in nature. That's what I would recommend.
UDGAR, that is excellent advice. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to this and other thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love, and may your harvest be rich and abundant. And let's go back to grassroots. That's where it all began, and that's where nutrition truly lies.